Phantasm, the delusion of a disordered mind. A phantom, a spirit, a ghost.
Hello, kitties. Today, your Uncle Newton has something very special planned for you. A series of films that will take us to the farthest reaches of the imagination, to a world where there are no rules, where nightmares are born. This is the world of Phantasm.
Boy.
Whoa! Whew. Although it's been 40 years since the Tall Man first entered our plane of existence, Phantasm is a relatively recent addition to my obsession with fright films. A few years ago, your Uncle Newton wasn't doing too hot, kitties, and one of the films that led me out of this funk was a little movie by a kid from California. A movie that broke all the rules and sent me down a rabbit hole 4 sequels long. From 1979, this is Don Coscarelli's seminal drive-in classic, Phantasm.
Phantasm tells the story of two brothers, Mike and Jody, played by A. Michael Baldwin and Bill Thornbury. Still coping with the recent death of their parents, Jody feels trapped into looking after his kid brother, while Mike is worried about getting left behind as Jody grows up. But little do they know that a dark shadow has fallen over their small town, one that will bring them closer together than they could have ever thought possible.
What we gotta do is we gotta snag that tall dude and stomp the shit out of him, and we'll find out what the hell is going on up there.
With the help of their best friend, a balding ice cream vendor named Reggie, they confront flying metal blood-sucking balls, killer Jawas, and a tall man bent on exhuming the local cemetery for slave labor on an angry red planet.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
You know that part of the night where the chick you're having sex with in the cemetery stabs you and transforms into an old man? This movie's kinda like that.
Yeah, this one, it's probably not going to help if I explain it, kiddies. Typically speaking, most movies are straightforward. Even if there's a mystery, usually there's a logical conclusion. But Phantasm is a movie that leans heavily on ambiguity. Don Coscarelli was a fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick, and its influence shows heavily in this film.
Phantasm knows that there is so much to be gained by not explaining things. Dreams don't usually make sense, and there is poetry in that. For a horror film, that only makes things more frightening. Without rules, anything can happen and anyone can die at a moment's notice. But a movie like Phantasm can't resonate on ambiguity alone. The real reason this movie lingers is because it has heart. This is a guy's movie filled with fast cars, drinks, rock and roll, and two brothers at the core of it all just trying to keep each other safe. Want to see one of the best scenes in the movie? At this point in the flick, Mike has come back from a fucked up night at the local mausoleum. When he presents Jody with proof of the supernatural, this is his response.
Okay, I believe you. Jesus.
Isn't that perfect? No bullshit, no fake suspense, no trying to prove that there's something weird going on. Just, I believe you, let's go out and crack some skulls. Boom!
No warning shots. Warning shots are bullshit. You shoot to kill, or you don't shoot at all.
Fuck yeah! The other reason I love this flick is because of the villain. Mike and Jody's primary nemesis is the town's otherworldly mortician, the Tall Man. Played with a stern boogeyman quality by character actor Angus Scrimm, more than any other movie villain I've seen, he feels like the perfect cross between the classic monsters of the Universal era and the more modern killers of the slasher age. Actually, the one place he might feel at home is in the Twilight Zone. His origins are kept deliberately vague, and even though they expand upon his backstory in the sequels, it just creates more questions. Plus, you gotta love the way he reads those lines.
I've been waiting for you. You play a good game, boy, but the game is finished. Now you die.
And, just like the very best of boogeymen, we all know there's no way to truly kill the Tall Man.
Listen to me. This is not happening. We're gonna wake up. It's a dream.
It's only a dream.
No, it's not.
Arriving in theaters almost a decade after the original, Phantasm II was a big-budget sequel put out by Universal Pictures. Mike is back, this time played by James LaGrosse, and he teams up with Reggie, who in this film begins to take over as the story's central character.
That story about me blowing up my own house because it was infested with midgets. Mike, that wasn't real.
It turns into a road movie, something that would define the series from here on out, and follows the boys as they pursue the Tall Man, eager to put an end to his evil plans. The gore and special effects are amped up into major what the fuck territory, and it all builds to an explosive climax.
A lot of people consider this to be the best of the franchise, but for me, Universal messed with it too much. They were worried about people not knowing when it was a dream and when it was real life, so they added a lot of unnecessary voiceover. But still, that doesn't stop the movie from being metal as fuck.
You think that when you die, you go to heaven. You come to us.
God damn it.
Between this and Phantasm III, Reggie was transformed into the ultimate blue-collar working-class hero. With a slap-together quad-barreled shotgun and a no-nonsense attitude, he's almost like a dehumorized version of Ash from the Evil Dead franchise. Here is a guy who's just an average stiff, sincere, trying to survive, and loyal to his friends. Also, he somehow manages to get laid in like every movie. Or at least in his dreams, anyways.
God, Reg, I love your head. Oh, you're so big. Oh.
Coscarelli wrote and directed all but one of the sequels, and Phantasm III brought with it a new sense of humor. Home Alone hijinks and badass women were the name of the game. A. Michael Baldwin was back as Mike, and a lot of this and Film 4 dealt with him trying to understand the Tall Man and reconnect with his lost brother, who may or may not be evil? Phantasm 3 also has some of the most badass shots of the Tall Man in the entire franchise. Phantasm IV, or Phantasm Oblivion, saw a major step down in terms of budget and a return to the somber tone of the first film. While it isn't the most satisfying entry in the franchise, it does explore the Tall Man's backstory quite a bit, and its stretching of the indie dollar is impressive. To get these shots in downtown LA, they waited to film at the crack of dawn on Thanksgiving when everyone was still home in bed. No permit, no problem.
Boy!
Coscarelli also wrote the script to repurpose deleted scenes and footage from the first Phantasm film. My favorite bit is probably the hanging tree sequence. It's genuinely creepy and follows the childlike dream logic of how you would catch the boogeyman.
Cut me down, boy!
Plus, it's cool to see new footage of the actors from the original film and know it's not a cheat. After Oblivion, the series went dormant as Coscarelli decided to focus on other projects. Then, 18 years later, arrived Phantasm Ravager. Seriously, how do they keep fitting in those damn Roman numerals? Anyways, Coscarelli co-wrote and produced, but this time the directing duties fell to David Hartman. This is the most ambitious film in the entire franchise, filled to the brim with huge effect sequences, fan service, cameos, references to unmade sequels, and it all ends up feeling like a big fan film that just happens to star the actors from the actual movies. It's okay, but it feels cheap, and the grand set pieces only serve to remind you of this. The ending almost falls into place, but just misses the mark, and by the time they stopped the credits for a gratuitous cameo, I was done. I feel like Hartman let his inner fanboy run away with itself. There's a lot of cool ideas here, but any sense of subtlety is thrown right out the window. It isn't a horror movie anymore, it's a friggin' post-apocalyptic alien invasion. But still, it has Reggie and Mike and Jody, and of course, the Tall Man.
You're not even real. You're my bad dream.
And that's why we watch these movies. I said that the Phantasm series represent a dark rabbit hole in the history of horror, as trippy as they are fun and freaky. But through it all, there's also love, there's friendship, and there's brotherhood. The Tall Man always gets the last word because death is unstoppable, and the world is a dream because that's how reality feels sometimes. These movies can be trash and they can also be thought-provoking, but they are all different.
My first exposure to these movies came at the tail end of a drive-in movie marathon. I was starting to fall asleep, and even though I couldn't see the movie, I heard the iconic music. For the longest time, I wasn't sure if it had been real or just another part of my nightmares.
Or maybe, just maybe, it was a phantasm.
It's never over.
God, Reg. I love your head.